The Giants are here, and Shanks might be too, as we get one of the most brutal and jaw-dropping chapters of the Egghead Island arc so far. And wow, I mean, it is insane the sheer power on display by these Giants as they wipe out entire sections of the massive marine fleet in a stunning show of force. And you can say all you want that these are just fodder marine ships in the first place, but I do not care. It is still just so incredible to see such powerful allies pulling up to help the Straw Hats in this scenario. And while we sadly still don't get to see Shanks in the chapter, I still don't want to entirely rule out the real possibility of the red-haired Emperor actually being here as well. Because there are actually a number of reasons that it really makes sense for him to arrive at the future island here too. For one, we last saw Shanks in chapter 1079 when he just completely demolished the entire Kid Pirates in one slash of his swords. And with that act of just gruesome violence, we have entered a new era of Shanks. Because no longer is he just sitting around and waiting for things to happen. Nope, he is ready to claim the One Piece himself. And so it would make a lot of sense, I think, if he would actively be collecting poneglyphs at this point. And we already saw him take the copies that Kit had, and we do think that he got the final one from Elbaf, possibly at least. So if he truly is on a real rampage towards Laugh Tale, then the next easiest step would be to come to Egghead Island and, well, steal the one missing road poneglyph copy he's missing from the Straw Hats. So yeah, I guess evil Shanks theory is still very much on the table. Or if he's not here for the poneglyphs, well, there is another situation that just makes way too much sense here. Because remember that even if you have the poneglyphs, well, you still need someone to actually decipher and read them. And what a coinkydink, the one person who can do just that is Nico Robin, who is on Egghead Island and very conveniently right now seems to be injured and unable to protect herself. So, you know, just saying, we've been waiting for the Blackbeard pirates to swoop in and kidnap Robin all along, but it might just be another emperor altogether doing just that in their stead. And if that wasn't enough yet to satisfy your Shanks fantasies, I mean, it definitely wasn't for me, then also do remember that Shanks has history with the Celestial Dragons and specifically the Gorosei. In fact, at this point, it's very, very, very likely that he was basically born a Celestial Dragon, and we've even seen him having a secret conversation with the Five Elders as well. And so wouldn't it just make way too much sense for the first time that we actually get to see a Gorosei's true powers that we also learn more about their connection to Shanks. Of course, Shanks could also clash here with the Blackbeard pirates or the Holy Knights even, if either of them actually end up showing up during this conflict. But either way, don't rule out the option that Shanks is gonna show up here quite yet, even if we didn't yet see him in this chapter. Which of course we can't say for the people working with him, because back to the Giants, since we do know that they are here for a fact right now, and it's time to take a real deep dive into what this actually means for the current arc and the future of Elbaf. And first of all, let's break down why they are here in the first place, in case some of you are confused. Well, of course, remember that in chapter 1066, we learned that Vegapunk actually studied all of the research from the library of Ohara that was rescued and then moved to Elbaf. And of course, Vegapunk seemed to study with the survivor of Ohara, who is the giant Jaguar D. Salt. So it would make real sense that Saul would want to rescue Vegapunk right now if he actually knew that his friend was in real danger here. In other words, since the Giants are here, we could be seeing Saul very soon in the story if that were the case. However, we also see in this chapter that the two main Giants, Dory and Broggy, proudly state that they are here for Straw Hat Luffy. So maybe it wasn't Saul who sent the Giants after all. And if that's the case, then you do need to keep in mind that this guy is a member of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet and has a portion of Luffy's Reaver card as well. In other words, it is entirely possible that after Dory and Broggy obliterated the Kid Pirate ship, they then decided to come find Luffy on their own. Maybe they did see that Luffy was in trouble based on his Reaver cards. But regardless of the reason, the fact is they are here and they have already done massive damage damage by erasing the marine ships surrounding one part of the entire island. Which, you know, leaves a very interesting question on the table here, which is, what are they going to do next? Well, the easy answer is, of course, to create an escape route for the Straw Hats to flee the island. I mean, remember that in the last chapter, it was once again explained how the Straw Hats' original plan to use the Vega Force to get past the blockade is no longer an option at this point, which coincidentally means that the giant showing up right now does create a very much needed diversion for the crew to eventually actually escape on the Thousand Sunny. However, if you think that the giants are just gonna walk up and, you know, take out Saturn straight away and Kizaru, well, I think then you're probably mistaken here. So if that's you, take a deep breath of copium right now. Because as impressive as all the damage looks in this chapter, we still have to remember that a 5-year-old Big Mom fairly easily took out one of these elder giants who used to be the leaders of the giant pirates. Which means that in reality, despite being the strongest warriors in the world, these guys probably shouldn't really be even close to Yonko level, which would be the minimum required power level in order to actually fight someone like Kizaru or even Saturn. Now, that of course doesn't mean that Dori and Broggy here can't hold off the world government fighters at all though. I mean, just don't expect this to be a sweeping victory now that the giants have come to help Luffy. At least that's what we think they're here for, I guess. And while we're talking about their arrival here, did anyone else see Dori call Luffy the sun god? Like, excuse me? Because honestly, that was maybe the most shocking thing to me about the entire chapter, because as far as we know, no one has told the giants that Luffy is Sun God Nika. So does that mean that the Sun God is already parts of the giants' legends as well? And if so, does that mean that they actually also have ties to the Buccaneer race, which practically confirms, which we've all assumed all along, that the giants were also once allies of the Ancient Kingdom and Joy Boy. Wow, I mean, I'm just so excited that the pieces here are finally connecting a little bit, and if the giants do know lore about Joy Boy, then we could be just learning some of the very exciting stuff surrounding Joy Boy and Sun God Nika very soon. On top of that, the giants of course knowing about the Sun God and possibly Joy Boy just adds another One Piece race that is once again connected to either of these two figures. As a quick recap here, we already know that the fishermen made some sort of promise with Joy Boy. The Mings live on Zunisha, who stated herself that Joy Boy has actually returned, and Nika is said to be a hero for oppressed and enslaved people. So all that put together just makes it all the more likely that all the races of the world will unite with Luffy to finally liberate everyone. Or, you know, it's also entirely possible that Shanks just told the giants about Luffy's new legendary status as well, but I'm not too sure why he would even do that at this point. It's a possibility, and I guess we have to consider that as well. Now, to reel things a little bit back in here, I want to clarify that at this point, I actually do think that an escape is still more likely for the Straw Hats than straight up defeating Saturn and Kizaru at this point. But if that is actually true, then they will very likely travel with the giants for at least a little while. However, as excited as we are for the giants' arrival, it could have soul-crushing consequences for the future of the story here. Because remember, we have been explicitly told by Oda that he's trying to condense the story from here on out and get to the end. And if the giants are showing up here when no one really expected them to, then I could easily imagine a scenario where this is the only interactions we actually do have with the giants of Elbaf. Because listen to this. Apart from the thrill of adventure, what actually do we expect from Elbaf? An Usopp moment, most likely finding the 4th road poneglyph, a reunion between Robin and Saul, I guess. But you see, like, with the giants arriving here on Egghead now, we could actually get all of those things once the crew finally escapes from Egghead Island, which would mean that there would not even be a real need to go to Elbaf. And I'm not saying that that is what I want, just the opposite of course, but it is a distinct possibility now that the giants have actually arrived. arrived here. Nonetheless, if I had to bet money, I'd still say that we're going to Elbaf. And so, you know, let's assume that Oda isn't a monster and doesn't give us Elbaf, and instead, once the battle is over, well, the Straw Hats would very likely actually sail to Elbaf with an escort of giant longships. And the question of what happens next would once again be the most important one to discuss here. Does Luffy's alliance with the giant pirates mean that he's allied with all the giants, or would the rulers of Elbaf think a little bit differently here? And of course, how does Shanks himself fit into all of this? Because if he isn't here on Egghead, I really hope he is, will the Straw Hats still meet him on Elbaf, or will he just once again be off avoiding Luffy, collecting the other 1 or 2 poneglyph copies that he still needs? I mean, as always, it's really hard to say at this point, but there is one figure connected to the giants that we haven't really discussed yet, and that is, of course, Usopp. Because if you've paid any attention to One Piece whatsoever, well, then you will know for a fact that Usopp has been connected with the giants of Elbaf basically forever, and he has even befriended many giants throughout the story. However, he has also literally done nothing, and I mean nothing, for the entire Egghead arc so far. So if there was an Usopp moment that Oda has been saving for us, then, well, the best time for that has come right now that the giants have actually arrived. And that, of course, might mean that he has some truly heroic moments, or he gives a very inspiring speech, but either way, don't be surprised if Usopp actually shows us something truly special towards the final chapters of Egghead. But as hype as the giants and potentially Shanks arriving on Egghead is, though, there was also so much more in this chapter that actually happened, because bodies were dropping left and right, Vegapunk got stabbed by Saturn, Frankie and Sanji got blasted by Kizaru, then suddenly Luffy returned and slammed Kizaru away from his friends. I mean, really, this battle is truly heating up, and it does seem like Luffy will end up holding off Kizaru while the rest of the crew tries to escape. But of course, that still does leave us with Saturn, who is still a very major problem. Let's not kid around here. However, we might have actually figured out how to defeat Saturn, because as we all expected, the Pacifistas, big surprise, are once again on our side. And I mean, sure, we didn't know exactly how that would happen in the end, but I don't know who is actually surprised by this twist at this point. In fact, in this chapter, Vegapunk actually revealed that he originally programmed Bonney as the highest level of command for the Pacifistas above the Gorosei, and so basically she can order them now to do whatever she wants. Which, as a result, of course, also completely overrides Saturn's commands here. Which obviously the first thing she absolutely should do is order them to blast Saturn over and over again until he is very dead. And if you remember, one of the ways that we thought you might actually be able to kill Saturn is to basically keep hurting him until he kind of runs out of healing powers, and an unstoppable wave of overpowered lasers, like, that seems like a pretty good way for me to do that, I think, which could ultimately potentially lead to Saturn's death during this arc, which would be so sweet at this point after everything that he's done. Or if he isn't dead, then he could also somehow teleport still to protect himself. In fact, I could very much imagine him doing something very similar to the way that he arrived on the island in the first place, with this dark magic circle, although we don't know exactly still how any of that really works, so who knows if he could even do that if he wanted to. One way or the other, though, it does leave us with a few very interesting questions for the future here, though, such as, will Bonney be able to control the Pacifistas just forever from now on? And if so, that's just an insane major boost to her powers, because these things are so hard to kill. And if Vegapunk made Bonney the ultimate authority for the Pacifista, does that mean that he did the same for the Seraphim as well? Yeah, that one I do kind of doubt, since the reason he gave her command over the Pacifista was that he didn't want Bonney to be hurt by something that, well, looks like her father. Is her father? Who knows? But I mean, it's still a possibility he did the same for the Seraphim as well. Though, why didn't Vegapunk just reveal this a lot earlier in the arc and then save everyone the trouble of fighting the Pacifista in the first place? I mean, storytelling? I don't know. I really don't know. That would have been smart, I guess. But speaking on Bonney's powers here, actually, this chapter also showed Bonney learning the fact that Luffy is the real deal, the real sun god Nika. Now, remember that just a few chapters ago, we were shown that Bonney's powers are basically fueled by what she believes is actually possible. And so when she was basically about to be killed by Saturn, she lost faith, which basically drained her entire powers. But now that she's actually seen Luffy though, I kind of do wonder if her powers will actually be restored at this point, or, I mean, even increased because of her renewed full faith in the sun gods. If that's the case, what kind of amazing things do you think could she actually do with her powers? For example, could she make a future where her father is still alive? I mean, I'm honestly not sure at this point, but basically anything certainly seems very possible, really. As coincidentally also does Bonney's chance here to become the next Straw Hat. And I do know that this has been discussed by me and others many times during the Egghead Island arc, but this kind of moment with Bonney that we saw on the epic double page spread here is exactly the type that, you know, makes me think that a person could be a candidate for the Straw Hats. And it honestly just reminds me of Nami's moment in Arlong Park, or Robin's in Enies Lobby. And to take this even further, we now even have more evidence that she fits the normal Straw Hat criteria pretty much perfectly. Because for one, Bonney already has a really dark backstory. Second, she is clearly being freed by Luffy and is going through her very own character journey during this very arc. And finally, if she does end up traveling with the Straw Hats, well, she has a dream of finding out more about her father's Buccaneer culture and beliefs. So bam, there you have it. Literally the perfect Straw Hat candidate. And since she is still technically a child, she could basically be the cabin girl that neither Tama nor Momonosuke ever got to be. Or, I mean, if we want to really, you know, lean heavy into that religious aspect here, she could be the ship's priest or something along those lines, you know, like going with Kuma's theme there. But besides that, really, there is one other thing that is pretty easy to miss in all of this chaos and all the battles happening on the island, and that's of course the fact that we also got the very first hint of movement from the Iron Giant here ever since we first saw it awakening during chapter 1092. Which, you know, it kind of seems like Oda is really hammering in the idea that the giant responds to Luffy using Gear 5. And I mean, that is also what caused it to wake up during the prior chapters, and now that Luffy is back to fighting with Gear 5, well, the Iron Giant has started moving again. And so I'm still very excited to see what's going to happen next with this piece of ancient technology, which again also kind of implies that 200 years ago, when it first climbed the red line, well, someone must have had Luffy's Devil Fruit and awakened it too to be able to move it, I think. Also, can we just appreciate a moment Luffy just casually turning the ground into rubber to catch his falling friends? Like, that was a power that we thought might be his true and only awakening power. So to see it used as just a small part of his actual awakening is pretty awesome, if you ask me at least. And if you're like me and sometimes actually forget that Luffy's Gear 5 powers are a lot more than just cartoon wacky abilities, that there is like a whole thing behind them that can basically alter and create reality, well, check out this video right here where I truly fully explain all of Luffy's insane awakening abilities as far as we understand them so far, and hopefully that gives you a better overview over how it works as well. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. I know it's annoying, but it really does help out the channel. Otherwise, Shanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.